Welcome to TradeTheMBI.com. This is John. This report is for the 9th of April. Fairly an inside day. Again, unable to break that ABM yellow line right here, which put us kind of in between. And we barely saw that crossover of magenta, pretty even with the MBI white shorts. So kind of an even balance, but they really used up a lot of that short-term buyer capability just to hold it there. So that not exactly a great feature for the market at this particular thing. I think it makes the 76 vulnerable to pressure as we continue to see. There's no real change here from a DOC reading here with red below the negative 13.5, but not really escalating any below that. We are at minus 21, which is a little bit of an area of positive push potential when you get down to like the minus 23 range, but not quite there yet. We've dipped back below the red line starting the day. Yesterday closed above it. But, there's just a tremendous amount of headwinds. I think that the market has started to recognize the inability of the Fed to, with reason, cut rates. There just is no justification other than the fact that you're swallowing yourself in an extraordinary amount of debt, and there's no relief in sight for that, particularly this year with an election taking place. It's not going to happen. So it's a quandary, and that escalation is starting to grow, and I think the nervousness of the market is starting to become more apparent as they recognize the really what's going to be the Fed's inability to do much of anything. And the question becomes then some kind of major credit event grows in probability. And the reality of that, I think, frightens the market more because it's going to be one of those shock events. And particularly as you're seeing a lot of funds in that go into heavy leverage at this particular stage, and particularly with rates what they are, it poses a real problem because the exit window gets very narrow. When you look at the NASDAQ, also very weak from its standpoint, though not a whole lot of short activity as well, and still able to hold above the shakeout, the extreme histogram red line down here, maintaining all green across. So that support has been significant. But again, you can see that we've moved quite a bit here from DOC steel, and that means that those midterm buyers, they've used a lot of their fodder. So unless they get some support from the broader big boys, it's going to be a little bit tough to maintain. And rates still well below where they should be, but closer to the right direction. And if that continues to break further, I think you saw odds of a rate cut dropping below 50% for the first time, and that's a huge sea change from the almost unanimous belief that the Fed was going to be cutting 3+ times. And I told you from the start of the year it was ridiculous talk in the first place, but hype moves markets. But this isn't hype. This is the reality. You see Russia is suffering with some of the drone attacks from Ukraine, reduced output capability. In fact, they're actually, I think they went to Kyrgyzstan or one of the other stands to look for gasoline supplies, potentially in case there's any shortfalls. They've excluded any export of it in quite dramatic fashion. So small oil disruption there is going to draw from the already limited supply that's available. You've got the Mideast heat building, which of course puts also greater demands on the ability to transport. There's just a lot of scary things out there. They're not yet materialized, and so you have a bit of a fear trade. But these numbers at 86, moving towards 90, it's a death knell for the economy. There's just no other way to describe it. The fact that the euro is popping under this is ridiculous simply because it's only costing the eurozone more and more by the day to support all of their needs, and they're going to have to transfer those into dollars at some point. So the homogeny of the dollar is not going anywhere as much as people want to say that the dollar is dead. It's dead relative to things like this, commodities and cryptos. I told you gold was going to explode. It's continuing to explode. It's not ended. It's not going to be done. There's no end in sight for it now because the reality is clear. And everywhere around the world, people are looking for places to get their resources into something other than the fiat currencies of their local communities because they see the spiral that they're all in nonsense mode, doing things that are just economically not viable. it's just the reality of it. Bitcoin also taking a massive leap towards its highs, and where will it stop? Those crazy prognostications of Bitcoin at 500,000, these other things, and not that unrealistic. They never have been. It was just a question of when does confidence in the faith and credit of the dollar and that begin to erode, and I think they've done everything they possibly can to make that a reality. Don't say that with any joy, because it's not a good thing. It's not a good thing for anybody in the world. And energy being expensive is not an economic producer. It just destroys things. Now, there's a whole side of the green argument that argues that higher energy costs are great because it makes alternative energies more competitive. Well, no, they were never competitive. It just means that you have a skew of really what energy costs should be, and you're really just throwing that under the muck under the guise of climate change, which we all know the ridiculousness of that argument, wanting to cut CO2, the very lifeblood that feeds plants, and that it's strange. I know that's not a popular view, but it is nonetheless a reality of science. And when science used to be real science before it got hijacked. From a 50K standpoint, here you can see we're crossed below at this particular point, magenta under yellow. That's going to express some more weakness. And if that MBI white continues to ride, this could be that secondary move I was talking about that would lead to that push to the 50 as well as back to that 0%. So that's the expectation given what we saw from this initial move right here. And I believe right here it took 3 days or so before it finally started to materialize. We're pretty close to that point at this particular stage, so we'll see if that cycle continues itself. I mentioned that we would have added volatility intraday because they have to destroy and decay the gamma of options trades, and that's exactly what you see there. So it's just a beautiful representation of it. The pop, drop it, kill it all, pump it again, do the same thing, and then trade sideways from there. So that's the reality of it. But you just need to be prepared. There's just a lot of headwinds, and you need to be in a situation where you can exit long positions appropriately and be secure in sell signals where they come, because they will have legs. So that's the long and the short of it. As always, anything relevant, I'll put it on the Skype chat. Have a good one. Trade well.